Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome my next guest, Tim Clarke from Quay Crew. He is the co-director. How are you, Tim?
I am good. Thank you very much, Ria, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we have been talking a lot about crew safety here at Yachting International Radio, and there's been a lot of sort of chatter more recently, probably within the last 2 or 3 years, about the realities of what life on board is like and what kind of people are getting away with what. Now, you have partnered up with Crew Pass. You are going to be doing criminal record checks on the crew. Is this going to be all crew that you hire?
So we are going to be offering it to the clients that we're working with. It will be down to the client's discretion whether they want to do it or not. But the plan is to do it on the vast majority of the crew we place, yes.
Why hasn't this been done before?
That's a very good question. I think Conrad's idea is fantastic and the platform for it is brilliant, which has made it a lot more accessible than maybe previous companies out there pushing criminal background checks. I think it's one of those things which is a pain in the arse to do. It takes time, costs money, et cetera, et cetera. So people have never really had an appetite for doing it. You know, it becomes one of those boxes which would be a nice box to tick, but it's not an essential. No one's insisted on it. So why should we do it?
Do you not think, though, that owners sort of assume that those they're putting in charge of their multi-million-dollar vessel, those that are interacting with their guests, those that are interacting with their children, criminal record checks were done?
100%. I think a huge chunk of owners, if you ask them the question, would be like, well, of course the crew are being criminal background checked. You know, that's a given. When, of course, the reality, that is far, far from the truth. And, you know, you've hit the nail on the head. It's the circle of trust. You're getting access to some of the richest, most powerful people in the world, their children, et cetera, et cetera. The list is endless. So, yeah, I definitely think it's an assumption that it does happen, but obviously it doesn't.
Do you have a thought as to why this hasn't happened before?
Moving away from it's a pain in the arse to implement it, why has it not happened?
Is it the expense? Is it?
In the grand scheme of things, the expense is tiny compared to, you know, the annual operating cost of a yacht. So that as an argument doesn't really stack up if the yacht is picking up the cost. As a crew agent, the cost of criminal record checks and things like that is not insignificant for a junior level placement. You know, crew pass, £199, doesn't sound like a lot when you place it against a €2,500 placement. But when you ramp it up and look at it over the cost of a year and what your profit percentages are, it's a significant commitment without going too much down the commercial line and, you know, going into facts, figures and numbers and stuff like that. I think maybe some of the influential companies within yachting have just not had an appetite. I think there's probably been at all times a percentage of crew who would fail these criminal background checks. And that probably further opens another can of worms, which probably doesn't reflect well on anyone involved in that particular yacht and the program. So I think there's a few reasons. And I think yachting as an industry, in some respects, it's amazing and, you know, offers incredible opportunities, careers, some wonderful companies out there, but it is backwards. You know, it is behind the times compared to other sectors quite significantly. So I would say that's an aspect of it as well.
In the past year, I would say, there's been a few incidences where we've found out that people that are working in yachting, people that are being placed on yachts, do have a criminal history and are continuing their criminal ways, as it were, while being funded by yachting.
Yeah, there's undoubtedly hundreds of examples out there that people don't know about. In my 10 years as one of the owners of Quay Crew, we've seen lots and lots of things over the years. You know, you take verbal references from captains, you get told the story that happened and, you know, so straight away, you know, crew member X has got a criminal record somewhere. And obviously, you know, criminal record, it can vary from the relatively innocent drunken mistake when you're 18 to the other scale, which is there's some real predators out there in yachting who have probably chosen it as an industry for specific reasons. And, you know, they are out there preying on people.
Do you think that unless this becomes a law, that people will continue to not do those checks unless asked?
No, what I think will happen is, due to some of the larger management companies building it into their processes, people like us implementing it a lot more widely, other crew agencies implementing it more widely, it will become over time that you're expected to do it, so you will have to do it. Otherwise, it'll hinder you commercially and competitively. So actually, I think Crew Pass is at the forefront of a really good movement. And, I think if we fast forward 3-4 years, I think we'll see a lot more crew being criminal record checked when they come into the industry in their first jobs. And I also think there will be certain forward-thinking management companies will be criminal record checking everyone in their fleet retrospectively.
Say, for example, you've got somebody on board and they have been criminal record checked, and 2 or 3 years down the road, they need to look for a new job because the boat's been sold or for whatever reason. Will you do an additional criminal record check on them before they go to their next vessel?
I guess that's one of those scenarios where if the client says, yes, we want a criminal record check, then we would do a criminal record check. I think, as always, with all of these things, nothing is infallible unless there's 100% consistency across the board, whether that's with management companies, crew agencies, yacht, etc. The reality is, even with people like us and some of the big management companies fully embracing this, well, the crew who've got criminal records will still find some jobs. It's just it'll be on someone else's boat and not one you work with. So, yeah, I would think that we would be doing additional ones in the future. You have to, otherwise they're sort of irrelevant. Maybe if a criminal record's 6 months old, fine. 4 years old, well, a lot can happen in 4 years. And you can make the argument as well, the average 18-year-old, maybe on some of the more serious sort of criminal records that are being flagged, it's the start of their offending career. They're too young to have done anything they're growing into their bad habits or, whatever they're doing. So, yeah, no, it's in points.
I'm hoping that this sort of does become something that everybody puts into place. It would be nice because I know that on land, when you go to a job that you are required to be in people's intimate spaces, you are required to make sure that you're not going to be stealing from them. You're not going to be standing over them with a knife in the middle of the night. The fact that you are on this floating house, literally in the middle of the Atlantic or the Caribbean or the Mediterranean, still baffles me to this day that you could be hiring a mass murderer, and who would know?
Yeah, I think the laws vary on region to region and stuff like that. And certainly in the UK, there are stipulations about criminal record checks and who you can and can't check. If you're digging roads, then someone can't criminal record check you because, it's sort of considered irrelevant. If you're working in a nursing home or you're having access to kids or whatever, criminal record checks are part of the process. We've worked with a few clients outside of the UK. And when I'm talking about clients, I'm talking about land-based companies where drug testing and medicals and criminal record checks and stuff is part of the process, default part of the process. There's no ifs, buts or maybes. Everyone who gets employed by us does one of these. Now, there's a variety of reasons for that, but yeah, it's an interesting way of doing things. Yeah, it's good. There's pros and cons as always with everything, I guess.
I have a feeling if you started drug testing, you'd probably see 75% of crew the world over no longer employed.
Yeah, I think without going off on too much of a tangent, if we hair follicle tested a huge bunch of crew in a yachting hub, there would be a huge number of failures, more failures than passes. Obviously, hair follicle test, you get 3 months worth of results. Urine test, it's 2 days, something like that, 3 days. Blood test, I'm not even sure, even less possibly. So yeah, that's another fascinating topic, which maybe we can revisit on another chat. But there is a big drug taking culture within yachting. And obviously some of these people are going to have criminal records because they're going to get done for possession or whatever in the past.
Look, I'm no saint. What you do on your own time is your own business. But when you are getting on a vessel and you are being paid X amount to do a job, you should at least expect that there is no drugs in the system when they board that vessel. And as long as they're employed on that vessel, a test that certifies whether or not you're sober when you get on board.
Yeah, I think in the commercial world, that is taken far more seriously than it is in the yachting world in terms of alcohol consumption and things like that. I actually think what probably needs to happen without that being misconstrued is if there's a serious incident and then someone's drug tested, alcohol tested, and the cause of the accident gets traced back to, well, actually, the chief officer was still drunk and had cocaine in his system when the tender was crashed, then I think insurance companies will take notice and maybe management companies, and then steps will start to be taken to protect owners, yachts, the cost of insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, unfortunately, I think these things only improve when there's an incident, in yachting at least.
You take a look at the stats, and throughout the world, the highest cause of boating accidents is alcohol consumption.
Alcohol. Yeah, I didn't know that, but that would have been my first guess.
Yeah, you deal with crew all the time. The industry is facing such a shortage of crew, as we're hearing, and they are sort of grasping at straws. Why do you think that there aren't so many crew in the industry today? Why do you think that there's not so many people flocking to be part of the industry? And how can we change that?
I think there's lots of people entering the industry. They're just not high enough caliber. Below deck is probably the biggest advertisement for the yacht industry worldwide. And unfortunately, below deck, and I know a few of the people who have been on below deck who are great people, et cetera, et cetera. Below deck is a terrible, terrible advert for yachting, and it appeals for all the wrong reasons to the wrong candidates. You know, heavily alcohol focused, lots of sleeping around, lots of spending time in the jacuzzi, drinking champagne, and the work is really average, which is what I really loathe about below deck. It's the average service levels, but that's what's attracting people to the industry. So it's attracting the wrong sort of people to the industry. I think that, at the risk of sounding really old here, Ria, society as a whole, more and more kids are going through school, going through university, and getting to the age of 20, 21, 22, and they've never had a proper job. They've never worked hard in their life. And I want to work in yachting. Hold on a minute. You've never had a job before, full-time job. And now you want to work on a boat where you might be working 7 days a week for weeks on end with very little time off. And you're going to dive into the working world in a job which is top 5% in terms of being challenging. So that's a problem. I think there is a lack of people entering the industry who genuinely love the sea. And I fall into that camp as well when I was crew. So yeah, lack of people who genuinely love the sea. You know, they're in it because they've heard that there's big money to be earned, the tips, the glamorous lifestyle. They're at a bit of a loose end. Someone said to me the other day, and I thought this was a really insightful comment. It was the chief stew, I think I was chatting to, and she made a joke about the lost boys of yachting. And I thought she's hit the nail on the head. You know, how many of the people entering the industry are a little bit lost? They're looking for something. They don't have an idea what they want to do with their lives or their careers. And I think there's a big chunk of crew like that who come into the industry. You know, they don't know what they want to do. And this seems like it's an appealing thing to do. So I think all those things factor in. And the reality is there's more and more boats being launched every year. There's more boats bringing in 3-1s, 2-1s, 2-2s for junior crew. And that it means there's a bigger requirement for crew. I mean, last year, I think there was 9 or 10 yachts over 3,000 ton launched. I mean, how many crew did those 9 or 10 yachts suck up? Probably 500, 600, maybe even. They've all got to come from somewhere. And that's just 9 or 10 yachts. That doesn't even touch upon, you know, the 120 yachts between 50 meters and 3,000 tons, which got launched. So just with new builds, you're looking at probably 1,500, 2,000 extra crew needed a year. And there's just not the volume of people entering and because there's so many jobs out there and boats are increasingly desperate and having to increasingly flex on what they're looking for, crap crew can get away with having crap CVs, not being very good at their job, and they end up on a reasonable boat because the boat's desperate. That's my take.
Do you think that part of yachting's problem right now is the image? 30 years ago, when you were looking for a deckhand, you'd go into the local watering hole, find yourself whatever sailor was passed out at the bar, pull him on board, passed out, and the next day he was informed he was your new deckhand. He didn't have to look pretty. He didn't have to have a six-pack. It didn't matter whether or not he was covered in tattoos. He was a salty sailor. He knew what he was doing, and he could do the job Do you think perhaps that part of these image requirements that yachting is looking for nowadays is a bit of a hindrance?
I think it's one of those ones is a bit of a vicious circle. Yachting's image attracts those good-looking people with six packs and, a chiseled jawline, etc. And it sort of goes hand in hand. Undoubtedly, some yachts favor the beautiful amongst us, but there's plenty that's not. Is it a hindrance? It probably hinders some individual programs, yes. But in the industry as a whole, that is not the big problem in the industry. There's lots of other bigger problems than that one, in my opinion.
So for those out there that may not be model thin and 6 foot tall, say, but they have a love of the sea, they still can apply because there will be jobs out there for them.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer in the cream rises to the top. You get that first opportunity, you work your ass off, you get on well with everyone, you don't cause any problems, you learn as much as possible, display a great attitude, stay on the boat for at least a year. You're going to walk away with a great attitude and be super employable after that. Then you're going to have a pick of a lot of boats. So being beautiful, male or female, helps, but it is not an absolute essential by any stretch.
Getting back to Crew Pass, how many companies do you know are offering it to all their clients?
Honest answer, I've got no idea. I know that Crew Pass are working with multiple management companies, including some of the largest, most well-known ones. And I know they're working with probably, most of the largest. There's probably 5 agencies which are bigger than everyone else. And I think they're pretty much working with all of them. So I think those are really positive signs it's going in the right direction.
Tim, I want to say thank you so much for your time. And I think it warrants another interview at some stage in regards to drug and alcohol issues on board.
I would thoroughly enjoy that. So I will look forward to that at some point in the not too distant future.
Wonderful. Everyone, this has been Tim Clarke. He is the co-director of Quay Crew. If you're looking to get into the industry, please do get a hold of them and make sure you get your criminal record checked. You've been watching another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next time.